Shrieks in the Wind. The year was 1527. The wind howled through the skeletal branches of the ancient oaks, their gnarled limbs clawing at the bruised twilight sky. In the village of Oak Haven, nestled deep within the whispering woods, an eerie silence had descended. The villagers, once known for their lively chatter and boisterous laughter, now moved with a hushed reverence, their faces etched with a grim determination. The tiny cluster of thatched cottages and cobblestone roads that formed Oak Haven had always been the seat of whispers and legends. Generations told stories of troublesome sprites, and fleeting shadows crossing moonlit woods. This had all been an essential part of their everyday, otherwise unremarkable life. Lately, however, the whispers were not as harmless. Instead, they seemed to hold within them an air of dark fear and dread. It began quietly. A chill draft, like cold breath, seemed to seep through the bones of their houses, sealed in with windows and doors locked up tight. The scent of damp earth and rotting wood filled the air alongside the smoke from their fireplaces and fresh-baked bread. Always an undertone of it, yet always, too, there were the shrieks. They came from the woods, piercing cries that seemed to claw at the very fabric of the night. They were infrequent and distant at first, but with the passing days and weeks, the shrieks grew louder, more frequent, closer. They were the cries of anguish, of terror, of something beyond human comprehension. The villagers, a hardy folk accustomed to the whims of nature, found themselves gripped by a fear they had never known. Sleep evaded them, their dreams haunted by the chilling shrieks and the fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures darting through the moonlit trees. Children huddled close to their parents, their eyes wide with terror, their innocent laughter replaced by a chilling silence. It was Ilara, a woman with eyes holding the wisdom of 1,000 winters, village elder, who first noticed these strange events. She spent her days paying attention to the shifting patterns of the wind, the behavior of the animals, and subtle changes in the earth beneath her feet. Ilara was a woman of deep intuition and ancient knowledge, who sensed a darkness stirring at the heart of the woods, a malevolent force that threatened to consume their peaceful existence. One evening, when the first stars were starting to prick in the darkening sky, Ilara gathered the villagers in the village square. The air was heavy with tension, the only sound being the crackling of the bonfire and the restless rustling of leaves in the surrounding trees. "The woods are sick," Ilara declared, her voice raspy but firm. "A darkness has fallen upon them, a blight that threatens to consume us all." A murmur of fear ran through the crowd. "But we will not cringe," Ilara said, her voice rising over the hushed whispers. "We are strong. We are united. Together we will face this darkness and banish it from our land." Her words, though tinged with a hint of uncertainty, instilled a flicker of hope in the hearts of the villagers. They were a community bound by ties of kinship and a deep respect for their elders. They would not allow fear to consume them. They would fight. But as the nights lengthened and the shrieks grew louder, their resolve began to waver. The fear, once a distant whisper, now clawed at their throats, an insidious presence that threatened to snuff out the last embers of their courage. Days passed into days, but all of them were filled with unease and apprehension. The villagers, whose normally lively lives were now overshadowed by the constant lurking of unknown danger, went about their daily chores with a very heavy heart. Children, no longer allowed to play in the woods, huddled indoors, with their laughter silent, replaced by a sense of somber quiet. Ilara, the village elder, spent her days observing the woods, her keen senses alert to any sign of the malevolent force that had taken root within its depths. She noticed the trees, once vibrant with life, were now shrouded in an unnatural stillness, their leaves drooping listlessly, their branches heavy with an unseen weight. The air, once full of cheerful chirping from the birds, had now turned eerily silent, only broken by an occasional rustle of leaves and chilling shrieks far away. One afternoon, going further into the woods than she had for years, Ilara chanced upon a clearing. It was a small oasis of serenity in an otherwise growing darkness. There, at the center of the clearing, stood one oak tree, its bark scarred and twisted. Its branches seemed to stretch out like skeletal fingers to the darkening sky. As Ilara approached, she felt a sudden chill, a feeling of danger looming. She saw the oak tree, realized with a jolt that it was different. It pulsed with unnatural energy, its leaves shimmering silver with an eerie, unearthly light. She heard the whispers, first faint, then growing louder, a chorus of voices whispering secrets on the wind. The whispers spoke of ancient curses, of forgotten gods, of a darkness that had been slumbering for centuries, awakened by a long-forgotten transgression. They spoke of a sacrifice, a blood offering to appease the wrath of the unseen forces that now held the woods in their grip. Ilara backed away from the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. The visions had been so terrifying that she couldn't think. The whispers seemed to fill her mind and grew louder, making her feel an increasing sense of dread. The darkness, she now realized, was not a fleeting shadow, but an evil entity of ancient power, demanding a terrible price. With each day going into the week, bizarre and weird things started to happen among the villagers. Things began to disappear for no reason, and then suddenly reappear in the most unlikely of places. At night, doors would swing open on their own while they were locked. The screams that had been an occasional noise from afar became a consistent, chillingly close noise that seemed to come from within their very homes, reminding them that something otherworldly lurked nearby. Fear, once a distant whisper, now consumed the village. The once vibrant community was now a shadow of its former self, haunted by the constant fear of the unknown. The children, their innocence shattered by the terrifying events, clung to their parents, their eyes wide with terror. The burdened knowledge of Ilara found an abode in the companionship of a young man named Liam, who was a great hunter and also a man with unbreakable courage. Liam initially did not believe her when she came to him. He was impressed by Ilara's wisdom and faith in the face of enormous fear. He offered himself to help her in investigating the matter at hand. His keen senses and familiarity with the woods proved highly useful. Together they ventured deeper into the woods, their hearts pounding in their chests, their every sense alert to the slightest sound, the slightest movement. They followed the whispers, their voices guiding them through the deepening shadows, towards the heart of the darkness. The woods, which once were a lifeline and source of supply for the villagers, were now pulsating with dark energy. The trees themselves had branches that were bent and twisted, like long skeletal fingers reaching out at the terrified villagers. It was as if the very air was heavy with a scent of decay and the villagers' fear, taking away their breath. With years of experience hunting in these very woods, Liam led the way, his senses keen to spot anything out of the ordinary in the undergrowth. Ilara trailed close behind him, her heart pounding in her chest, with an intuition that urged her to follow. As they got deeper, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, urging them towards some location that had to be covered deep within the heart of the woods. As the air got colder, the sunlight went pale as it filtered through the canopy of leaves, turning into an eerie shade of green. In the center of the clearing stood a towering oak tree, its bark scarred and twisted, branches stretching out like skeletal fingers towards the darkening sky. This was the same tree Ilara had found weeks ago, the one pulsing with unnatural energy, whispering secrets of ancient curses and forgotten gods. As they drew closer, they saw that strange symbols were carved into the base of the tree. The symbols seemed to writhe and shift. Their shapes were constantly changing. The air around the tree was heavy with a chilling energy, a sense of dread that seemed to seep into their bones. Liam felt a shiver go down his spine, as his hand rested on the hilt of his hunting knife. He had never faced anything like this before, a presence that seemed to seep into his very soul, filling him with a primal fear. Alara's eyes fixed on the whirling symbols, feeling dizziness rush through her. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, threatening to overwhelm her senses. She felt a strange connection to the tree, a sense of kinship as if it were living, reaching out to her, seeking a connection. It is suddenly as if the ground beneath them was trembling, the whispers rising into a deafening roar. The trees creaked and groaned around them, their branches lashing out like angry serpents. The wind blew through the clearing, bearing with it stench of decay and wails of unseen creatures. Liam, the beat of his heart in his chest, pulled out his knife, scanning the swirling shadows for signs of danger. Alara reached out a hand to the tree and felt a surge of power emanating from it. She felt connected to the ancient forces that held the woods in their grasp. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, hurling them to the floor. As they struggled for their footing, they saw it. From the bowels of the woods rose a shadowy figure of a tall and gaunt figure, with eyes gleaming with an eerie and malevolent light. The creature moved with unnatural grace, its limbs elongated and distorted, its movements fluid and predatory. It glided towards them, its form shifting and changing, sometimes appearing as a grotesque beast, sometimes as a spectral apparition. Terror, cold and paralyzing, gripped Liam. He raised his knife, his hand trembling, but the creature seemed to move with an impossible speed, its form a blur of motion. It lunged, its claws extended, for Liam's throat. Alara, despite the terror that threatened to consume her, channeled her fear into a surge of energy, her voice echoing through the clearing. "By the ancient spirits of the woods, I defy you." The creature paused, its movements momentarily stilled. It turned its gaze towards Alara, its eyes narrowing, a flicker of surprise crossing its face. Alara, feeling the creature's indecision, concentrated all her might on the ancient symbols carved into the base of the tree. She uttered an ancient incantation, her voice rising over the howling wind and the creature's guttural growls. As she chanted, the symbols began to glow, casting an ethereal light that illuminated the clearing. The ground beneath their feet trembled more violently, and the air crackled with unseen energy. The creature, sensing a shift in the balance of power, let out a deafening shriek that echoed through the woods. It retreated, its form dissolving into a swirling vortex of shadows, disappearing into the depths of the forest. Exhausted but relieved, Liam and Alara collapsed to the ground, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The air, once thick with dread, now felt lighter. The oppressive weight of the creature's presence finally lifted. They stayed in the clearing for a long time, their senses slowly returning to normal. The ground beneath them had returned to its usual stillness, the wind had died down, and the only sound was the gentle rustling of leaves. As they prepared to leave, Alara turned to Liam with eyes that seemed now determined. "The danger is not over," she said gravely. "The creature is still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike." Liam nodded in accord. He knew that this fight was just starting. A great power had befallen their beloved woods of darkness, and all would require their strength and more than a little bravery. The encounter with the creature had left an indelible mark on the villagers. The fear, once a distant whisper, now consumed their every waking moment. The children, no longer allowed to venture outside, clung to their parents, their eyes wide with terror. The men, their once jovial spirits dampened by the constant threat of danger, spent their days patrolling the perimeter of the village, their weapons close at hand. Alara, carrying the weight of her knowledge, came to the villagers to assuage their fears. She made sure that in the dead of night, she'd organize vigils, sharing stories of courageous people who stood up, reminding them of their power as a community. Liam, with his hunting skills now even more valuable, became the protector of the village and ventured into the woods each day, his eyes scanning the undergrowth for the slightest sign of the creature. He set traps, laid snares, and scouted the perimeter of the village, never resting. However, the creature remained elusive. It struck when least expected, its attacks swift and unpredictable. Livestock vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a trail of blood and the lingering scent of decay. The villagers, living in a constant state of fear, began to lose hope. One night, the terror spread like a wave over the village. From the woods, the screams now had spread to the streets, a cacophony of anguished cries that sent chills to the veins of every villager. They were gathered, cowering in their cottages, as the shrieks rose louder, nearer, until they seemed to come from within their very walls. The air filled with the stench of rot, and a damp, clammy fear seemed to settle over the village. At the crescendo of shrieks, the ground began shaking, and the houses had tremendous shudders. The villagers, their countenances twisted with horror, held on to each other in hopes that the fright would be over. Abruptly, the screams subsided, and in the quiet, there came a creepy silence. The earth lay still, but battered and bruised though they were, the houses did not fall. The villagers came out of their homes, hearts pounding within their chests, their eyes scanning the darkened streets for any signs of danger. But there was nothing. The streets were deserted, the only sound that of rustling leaves by the wind. As they entered the village further, they made a horrific find. In this place of sober quietude, the graveyard, it had turned into a scene of utter devastation. The tombstones had all been toppled over, the grounds churned and disarranged, and worse, the graves themselves had been desecrated, their contents spilling over onto the hallowed ground. The faces of the villagers paled into horror as they realized with a chilling certainty the truth. The creature could not harm the living. It had turned to the dead. The shrieks, they realized, were not the cries of animals or the howls of unseen creatures, but the tormented cries of the dead, their souls trapped in a purgatory of unending torment. The creature was feeding on their anguish, their despair, their very essence. Fear, once a distant whisper, now consumed the village. The villagers, haunted by visions of their deceased loved ones suffering in torment, could no longer find solace in their homes. They spent their nights huddled together, their eyes wide with terror, their sleep filled with nightmares of the tormented dead. Ilara knew that the battle was not as simple as she thought it would be. There was more to the fight than just a creature to be defeated. It was a malevolent force feeding on the very heart of life, hope, and joy, the very soul of their community. Liam, his face etched with a grim determination, knew that they had to find a way to stop the creature, to release the tormented souls from their eternal torment. But how? The creature, feeding on the very essence of death, was virtually invincible. As the days turned into weeks, things were getting hopeless. The villagers, defeated by the constant fear as well as the cries, had lost all spirit to continue. What had once been a thriving town had become a mere semblance of its former existence, with the looming shadows of death and the scream of tortured souls. Ilara, with the weight of her responsibilities on her, knew she had to find a way to break the creature's hold on. The spirits of the villagers were also broken by constant fear, as well as the ghostly shrieks. From once being an active village, they had become ghosts of themselves, haunted and scared by death, and chilled shrieks of the disturbed dead. Ilara was tired and weary of the burden weighing on her shoulders. They needed to find a way to break the hold on those tormented souls and release them from eternal torment. But how? It fed on the very essence of death, which seemed virtually invincible. Of course, desperation breeds ingenuity sometimes. Ilara drew from the ancient wisdom that came down through generations of learning and recalled an old prophecy, a whispered legend that spoke of a secret wellspring, pure untainted water, said to banish darkness and purify the soul. The legend said it lay deep within the heart of the forbidden woods, guarded by ancient spirits and hidden from the mortal eye. The journey to the spring was fraught with peril, a test of courage and endurance that few were said to survive. Ilara, with the fate of her village on her shoulders, made the decision to take on the dangerous journey. She chose Liam as her partner, as his courage and unwavering loyalty were what she needed in her companion. They went on the journey into the forbidden woods. Their path was strewn with thorns. They faced dangers unseen and their own demons. Whispers that were once so distant grew louder, urging them to turn back and abandon their quest. But Ilara and Liam refused to give in, their resolve fueled by the desperate requests of a dying community. Deep into the woods, they plunged into the silence, alert to every sound, their hearts pounding in their chests. Finally, after several days of having trekked, they reached the place. In the heart of a grove of ancient trees, they spotted the spring, a pool of crystal-clear water that sparkled with an ethereal light. As they approached the spring, their energy picked up along with a feeling of serenity and peacefulness which, for weeks, was nothing they could feel anymore. The air, no longer heavy with the scent of decay, was full with the fragrance of wildflowers. Ilara, her chest thudding with her pounding heart, lowered her hands into the cool water. It was somehow alive. Pulsing, gentle power seemed to be emanating from it. She drank deep of it, water tasting like pure, unsoiled life. Drinking made her feel empowered and in the same breath, a channeling of the ancient spirits for the woods, with such an oneness in and with nature. She drank deep and felt very calming inside, a sense so profound that it rested across her. Liam watched Ilara with a sense of awe and apprehension mixed in. He followed suit and drank from the spring, and the water removed the fear and despair he had felt for weeks, bringing a renewed sense of hope and a surge of strength he hadn't had in weeks. Having quenched their thirst, they filled up some of the spring water in their canteens, preparing to return to the village. As they prepared to leave, Ilara felt a sudden urge to return to the clearing where they had first encountered the creature. They went back to the clearing, their hearts heavy with anxiety. The ground, which had been churned and disturbed, was now still and calm. The air, which had been filled with dread, was now filled with peace and tranquility. Ilara focused her attention at the base of the tree, remembering the ancient symbols that once glowed with an otherworldly light. Over the symbols, she pours spring water while chanting a very old incantation, the sound of her voice echoing in the clearing. As the spring water hit the symbols, they started glowing, casting an ethereal light that lit up the clearing. The ground beneath their feet trembled a little, and the air crackled with unseen energy. Suddenly, a wave of energy erupted from the tree, spreading outwards in a shimmering wave. The air was filled with the sounds of weeping, of wailing, of tormented souls finally finding release. The shrieks, once a constant torture, subsided, and instead there was a deep silence. The air, heavy with the stench of rot, was now redolent with the scent of wildflowers. The creature, its source of food cut off, disappeared, its essence sucked back into the earth. The tortured souls, finally released from their eternal torment, were at peace, their spirits ascending to a higher plane of existence. The people who came out from their homes because of the abrupt silence found on their faces, confusion with a mixture of hope. They came into the streets, but something caught them by surprise. What had been left behind in this graveyard, utterly destroyed by the calamity, is now calm. The headstones stood erect. Nothing had been tampered with the grounds. Once defiled, now sealed graves. The villagers gathered themselves into the village square, overflowing with joy and relief, again laughing and chattering into the air. Fear had been their constant companion no more, but instead had been replaced by a newfound hope and optimism. Ilara and Liam stood amidst the villagers. Etched on their faces was exhaustion, but also something deep and profound in the satisfaction, with their hearts overflowing in gratitude. They had saved their village not through strength of arm nor through cunning, but by compassion, by courage, by faith in the hope and strength of the human spirit that would never let go. The villagers, ever grateful for their bravery and sacrifice, celebrated the victory with a feast, their laughter echoing through the night. The Shrieks, once a constant reminder of their fear and despair, were now but a distant memory, a chilling echo of a nightmare that had finally come to an end. The woods, once a place of fear and dread, were now once again a source of life and sustenance. The villagers, their spirits renewed, returned to their fields, their laughter echoing through the trees, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. And as the sun rose over the horizon, casting its golden rays upon the awakened village, Ilara and Liam knew that the darkness, though vanquished, would forever remain a part of their history, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief in the power of hope.